Movies. They can capture entire audiences with their ability to transport us to different worlds, timelines, and tell compelling stories that either can make somebody happy,
and I need you, and I miss you,
sad, or scared. Follow me down the rabbit hole as we uncover the iceberg of disturbing movies. We'll start with Tier 1. These are movies that are somewhat known, but like an iceberg, the upper part we can all see, or in this case, are movies we might know. However, there's a lot more that lurks beneath the surface of the iceberg that we can't see, or in this case don't know about. The further down we go, the darker and more disturbing it gets. A found footage psychological horror film directed by Michael Goy. It follows two girls named Megan and Amy, young teens who are kidnapped and tortured after talking with a stranger on the internet. The story is meant to teach viewers a lesson, but the film's sheer amount of torture and violent imagery is extremely disturbing. Viewers have commented saying the last 20 minutes of the movie is some of the vilest they've seen depicted in a movie, and some of the images are still stuck in their head. A pretty popular movie that has in later years become somewhat of a franchise. A lot of us have probably seen this during our lifetime. Two strangers wake up in a room with no recollection of how they got there, and soon discover they're pawns in a deadly game orchestrated by a notorious serial killer. The first Saw movie is not as gory or sadistic as the later entries are, but it still has some elements to it that made it worthy as a Tier 1 entry. A rookie and a veteran detective who is played by Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman hunt a serial killer who uses the 7 deadly sins as his motives and ways of killing. 7 isn't as gory as the previously mentioned movies, however the aftermath of the killings is quite disturbing, especially Sloth. I'm not gonna reveal too much of the movie as it has 8.6 at IMDb and is a highly recommended watch by a lot of people for its plot twist ending. The movie is based on the very popular and joyful holiday in Sweden called Midsummer. However, since we are on the iceberg of disturbing movies, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. A traveling couple begin a retreat that quickly devolve into a violent and bizarre competition at the hands of a cult. Characters are beaten and smashed, and bodies are cut up and burned, in some cases, alive. Five friends head out to Texas to visit the grave of a grandfather. On the way, they stumble across a deserted house with Leatherface lurking inside, armed with a chainsaw.
The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America.
This is a very tame film in contrast to the others, maybe because of its age. However, it could be argued as the film that started the whole genre. Maybe not the first, but the one that defined future horror and slasher films, and many of the scenes left people scarred. Therefore, it deserves a spot on the list. Directed by Lars von Trier, who is no stranger to controversies. However, some might think he went a bit too far with this one, that depicts the evolution of a prolific serial killer who describes his 5 most pivotal killings of his life. The movie breaks a few taboos that a lot of other movies won't touch, such as forcing a mother to feed pie to her 2 dead children, who he just shot in front of her, and the violence is far more disturbing and real looking than movies like Saw or Hostel. This is one of the rare movies that makes you physically uncomfortable down to your bones. The movie is essentially about an eccentric rich man that turns a guy into a walrus. It's not too scary or gory, it's just incredibly bizarre. The images aren't all that intense, but the whole idea of being physically augmented into an animal is just man-made horrors beyond comprehension. The film tells the story of Henry, A young man whose one-night stand leaves him to raise a grossly deformed baby in a hyper-industrial urban hellscape. You won't find any jump scares, however the movie is so surreal. It's basically meant to mess with your mind. I would describe it as more eerie rather than scary, however the severe deformities and the mutant baby is something that's kind of etched into my mind forever. If I would describe the movie in one word, it would be the anxiety movie. The story follows a deranged German surgeon who kidnaps 3 tourists and conjoins them surgically in order to make a human centipede. The movie is not scary in itself, but it's nasty and gross. What does scare me though is that somebody thought the story up, wrote the script and convinced people to act in it. Some scenes in the movie cannot be unseen. Now we're under the surface level. This is where it might start to get a bit obscure, but I'm sure some of you may have seen these movies. I know I have, but I wouldn't say it's shown in a lot of mainstream media or is too well known. Just beneath water level, we have Mother, a movie some might know, mostly because of Jennifer Lawrence. The poster looks all innocent and the name doesn't suggest otherwise, but trust me when I say, there's nothing innocent about this movie. It starts out as an intriguing mystery, but takes a turn for the worst. It's a movie you'll think about days after watching it, especially after the newborn scene. It's Halloween and a clown named Art is terrorizing 2 women on their way home from a party and everybody that gets in the way. I remember watching this when it released, and maybe I have a weak stomach, but I had to cover my eyes about half of the movie's runtime. It's unapologetically brutal. Especially that one scene. If you've seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We don't just hear the screams and the squelching of the flesh, we saw every moment of it. A German movie based around the true story of Fritz Hanke, a serial killer that strikes fear into the hearts of residents in Hamburg during the 70s. The movie is gross, filthy, raw, dirty, and unpleasant. And since it's based on the true gruesome crimes and not pure fantasy, makes it a tier 3. A writer who is brutalized and sexually assaulted during her cabin retreat seeks revenge on her attackers. They all deserve to die, but the way that they were killed, such as putting rotten mold into the wounds, is some of the craziest thing I've seen depicted in a movie. I Spit on Your Grave is a movie to see, pretty much to say you've seen it. I don't think it's supposed to be enjoyed. The oldest movie on this list by far, shot in black and white, and has been known for using real performers with real deformities as the basis of his cast. Many agreeing that this is an exploitation film, especially the way the disabled people are treated through the story. Is it a horror movie? I would say yes. I mean, they turned the lady into a human duck as punishment. A bizarre woman and her family compete with another couple to be named the filthiest people alive. The plot pretty much summarizes why it's on the iceberg. It has a lot of extreme shock purely for the sake of shock, and involves with a lot of animal cruelty and weird scenes. This is where a lot of movies start to get banned in certain countries. We're going further down the rabbit hole, and it's just going to get weirder and weirder from here on. Cited as being one of the first found footage films made, originated from Italy. A documentary team were studying the region's cannibals, but the tape was the only thing found by the rescue team. Director Deodato was arrested for suspicion to murder, among other things, after the release of the movie, due to its graphical content, including animals, and rumors that claimed that several actors were killed on camera. He was forced to reveal secrets behind the film's special effects because it looked so real, and he had to parade the actors before an Italian court to prove they were still alive. From the same director that made the previously mentioned The House That Jack Built, starring the Green Goblin for some reason, and is about a grieving couple retreating to their cabin in the woods, but nature takes its course and things go from bad to worse. Somebody mentioned that they can still remember the sounds and smells of the room they were in when they watched the scissor scene. I truly want to know what's going on inside von Trier's head. Another Italian movie. Care to explain yourself, Italy? A group of fascists takes 9 young boys and girls and puts them through 120 days of physical, mental, and sexual torture. It contains extreme acts of degradation and morbid acts, exploring the depths of human cruelty and power. Some people says that Salo makes the previously mentioned movies look like Dora the Explorer. Some of the scenes left people horrified for days afterwards. If you're still here, now we're diving into movies that are gonna make creepypastas seems like child play. Doing the research on most of the following movies made me feel really uneasy. I watched a couple of scenes from this movie like 10 years ago and I can still remember how disgusted and nauseated I became. Arguably one of the most messed up films that has ever been made legally. It's about an adult actor that struggles economy-wise and accepts an offer to make a film that without his knowledge contains pedophilia and necrophilia. The movie has been banned in 46 countries due to extreme and explicit scenes, such as brutal acts of physical and sexual abuse against unwilling participants, many whom are children and newborns. Let's just say you won't find this on Disney+. The movie is about an allegoric male character that falls in love with his pig, and it gives birth to human pigs which he later hangs in front of the pig's mother. Yeah, we're not in Kansas anymore, I can tell you that. Vasa de Noches could honestly be in a category of its own. We see things as bestiality, chorophagia, urine drinking, mutant pig humanoid spawns, and so on. There are actual rumors that the actor of the movie didn't fake the explicit scenes with the pig. There is no concrete proof, however. The actor has apparently been extremely vague when asked about it, and the original movie was destroyed. It begins with a robed man disemboweling himself before Mother Earth emerges from his insides. She then impregnates herself with the figure's semen after his disemboweling and the birth of the Son of Earth, leading to a series of brutal and horrific events. Described by the director as an experimental horror movie, I would personally describe it as something that never should have existed in the first place. This might surprise some of you. It's a war movie. It's a Soviet anti-war film where a young boy joins the Soviet resistance against the ruthless German forces. The film portrays in brutal detail the war crimes committed by the German regime in Eastern Europe, and it does not hold back. It's devastating, overwhelming, and extremely difficult to watch, especially towards the end. This is where it starts to get really disturbing and obscure. I hadn't heard of any of these films before doing research on the matter. I'm pretty sure most of you haven't heard of them either. These are movies that is going to be stuck in your mind forever. The movie is about a group of 3 men that graphically abuse a woman in all kinds of different ways. The entirety of the film is just 40 minutes of endless torture to the point where it's questioned if it's a snuff film or pretending to be one. Their methods are violent, insane, inhuman, and explicit. Only released in Germany, a mockumentary hosted by Dr. Francis B. Gross, fitting last name. He's trying to show you different faces of people dying. There are faked scenes of people getting killed mixed with footage of real accidents. This movie is just a collection of death scenes ranging from TV to homemade. There are execution by decapitation and electric chairs. One scene shows a group of people smashing a monkey's head and eating its brains. The film ends with some pretty graphic newsreel footage of people jumping off buildings and major accidents. Some says that the movie has 60% real footage and 40% faked. You can interpret that as you will. A young reporter fascinated by the urban legend of snuff films gets more than she bargained for when her deep research begins. Plot-wise, this movie doesn't have much going for it. It's just trying to be a snuff film. The torture scenes are incredibly realistic, and the pregnant woman getting tortured is something nobody should see. The movie was banned in most countries and apparently includes real animal abuse. We're at the bottom tier now. We've made it this far. If this is where you turn off the video, I respect you for making it this far. However, if you want to keep going, I'm just gonna say it will get a lot worse from here. A serial killer by the name Peter kidnaps and kills several innocent victims, while his nameless co-conspirator records and documents the murders. While researching this film, I honestly had to check that the movie had an IMDb page because I started to question if this was an actual snuff film. I promise you, this is not a film you should watch. Not a film for anybody, in all honesty. This movie has more in common with the viral cartel videos in the darkest corners of the internet and shouldn't exist at all. Oh, and it got sequels, just in case it didn't mess enough people up. I'm gonna describe this movie for you with just one sentence.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
The fact that this movie exists only implies that there are people who not only get off to bulimic prostitutes getting pretend tortured on film, but find it to be artful. What is even scarier is that the actor supposedly was an underground hardcore adult film star that was trying to get off drugs, and the director was exploiting her, and the movie is a result of that. People working on the movie also stated that he was lying to them and thought they were filming a whole different project. A documentary is supposedly about the experiments trying to create artificial life in the Soviet Union. It's basically a 75 minutes of surgery, autopsy, and disturbing stuff, including reconstructing the damaged human body, the separation of Siamese twins, and Cold War era attempts to create superhumans. Some people argue that this isn't as bad as the other movies in the Iceberg, however, it's really disturbing nonetheless. If there are any movies I missed, let me know in the comments and I'll make sure to make another updated Iceberg list together with you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.